Spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, is a rare degenerative neuromuscular disease that causes the loss of movement-related neurons, leading to progressive muscle wasting. It's a serious condition affecting 1 in every 10,000 babies and is the leading genetic cause of death in newborns. Until recently, those impacted by this disease had no hope for treatment, since there was no known effective medication. That changed when Spinraza was approved by the FDA at the end of 2016. It seemed like a breakthrough for those with SMA, offering a chance at a new life. But when Biogen revealed the treatment's price, it felt like a slap in the face. The first year would cost $750,000, with each following year priced at $375,000, an amount out of reach for far too many people. A few years later, Novartis released another treatment, Zolgensma, which offered more hope for SMA patients. But if you thought the first one was expensive, Zolgensma costs over $2 million. Yes, these drugs are revolutionary, but when you see the prices these companies charge, it's impossible not to wonder if they're just playing with people's lives. The formula is simple. If you can't pay, you don't get the medicine, even if it's a matter of life or death. The pharmaceutical industry is no stranger to scandals and shockingly unethical decisions. And yet, Big Pharma seems to get away with some of the worst practices in the market. But why is that exactly? Make no mistake, while the pharmaceutical industry has contributed significantly to many advancements in modern medicine, it's still, at the end of the day, a business. And like any business, its primary goal is profit. We often hear the term Big Pharma, which can carry a conspiratorial vibe. It suggests that a handful of companies dominate the global pharmaceutical scene, and their interests may not always align with what we hope for. Think of names like Pfizer, AbbVie, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, Roche, and Sanofi. These companies rake in annual revenues in the tens of billions. For instance, Pfizer, the leading company in this space, nearly doubled its revenue in 2022, reaching close to $80 billion. This impressive revenue isn't a fluke. Most medications used in medical treatments worldwide come from these kind of pharmaceutical companies, including critical therapies for life or death situations. These companies pour significant investments into drug research and development, aiming to roll out the next blockbuster drug, medications so groundbreaking they can exceed $1 billion in sales. Examples of blockbuster drugs include Lipitor, which helps lower cholesterol, Humira, used to treat inflammatory conditions like arthritis, and Advair, which addresses chronic lung diseases like asthma. Collectively, these three medications have generated over $3,050 billion in sales since their launches. This circles us back to a key point: profit. One major issue in this industry is that companies may not prioritize patient well-being when directing substantial funds toward research. Their focus often leans heavily toward profit. As a result, research frequently targets the development of medications with the highest profit potential, rather than tackling the most urgent health challenges. This concern is highlighted in the study Do Firms Underinvest in Long-Term Research? Evidence from Cancer Clinical Trials, which points out some unique aspects of the innovation sector, with the pharmaceutical industry as a prime example. They studied why the American pharmaceutical industry tends to focus its research on drugs for late-stage cancer rather than medications for the early stages of the disease. In short, it boils down to a rule from the FDA, the US Food and Drug Administration, which mandates a minimum duration for clinical trials of new treatments for early-stage cancer: 18 years. The issue is that new treatments must be patented before entering the clinical trial phase, and that patent only lasts for 20 years. So, after securing the patent, the lab has another 18 years of testing to get the drug approved, leaving just 2 years to turn a profit before the patent expires and competitors can step in. On the other hand, treatments for late-stage cancer require only a few years of testing, allowing companies to invest significantly less time and money in research and boosting their chances of making a profit. But there's another major problem in the pharmaceutical industry: a lack of basic research. Simply put, basic research focuses on fundamental principles and serves as the foundation for more specific applied research. Unfortunately, few companies are willing to invest in basic research because it doesn't generate marketable products or services. Essentially, it doesn't promise profits. As a result, basic research often falls to university and public research institutes. When the US government proposed cutting funding for public pharmaceutical research institutes in 2017, the private sector opposed the move, which is interesting since it would have opened up more opportunities for private labs. The situation became clear when the Center for Integration of Science and Industry released a study. It showed that between 2010 and 2016, all 210 new drugs approved for sale came from research conducted by public institutes. In other words, the American government funded these research with public money, and the pharmaceutical industry reaped the benefits without having to invest their own cash. Now, it makes sense why private labs fought against budget cuts for public institutes. But research is just the first step in the pharmaceutical company's quest for massive profits. Things only get worse from here. The pursuit of profit is a standard part of our economic system, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it crosses ethical lines, things get a lot more complicated. The reality is that the pharmaceutical industry has a unique ability to push these boundaries due to the nature of its work. Unlike many other sectors, the pharmaceutical field deals directly with human life. It's responsible for creating and manufacturing essential medications that are crucial for health services worldwide. These are drugs that often represent the last hope for people battling severe diseases like cancer, AIDS, and diabetes. These are also necessary for managing conditions like epilepsy, depression, and anxiety, allowing individuals to live normal lives. Since many specific medications are protected by patents, it means that countless individuals rely on a single product from one manufacturer just to maintain a basic quality of life, or in some cases, simply to survive. This gives pharmaceutical companies a staggering amount of bargaining power. After all, people in these conditions have no choice but to pay whatever it takes for a chance at recovery, and they don't hesitate to use this power. Take Daraprim or pyrimethamine. This medication has been used for 70 years to fight toxoplasmosis, a parasitic disease that can be severe for pregnant women and potentially fatal for those with weakened immune systems, like AIDS patients. It's listed as an essential medicine by the World Health Organization. Now, let's talk about Martin Shkreli, an American investor who stepped into the pharmaceutical world as the CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals. When Shkreli took over the company, he purchased the rights to Daraprim, which was priced at $13.50 per tablet in the United States at the time. Once he secured the rights, Shkreli decided to raise the price of Daraprim by more than 5,000%, pushing the cost to $750 overnight. This move sparked outrage, as the medication was vital for many people, and such an outrageous increase meant that countless individuals could no longer afford it. The story made headlines everywhere, and Martin's most acceptable justifications center around the need to recoup his initial investment in Daraprim and the necessity of funding new drugs to treat toxoplasmosis. It's important to note that the same medication was sold in the United Kingdom for less than $1. But Martin is quite the character. He never tried to hide that his main goal was to rake in as much profit as possible to keep his shareholders happy. At no point did he show any remorse for the outrageous price hike of Daraprim. This medication is used by about 2,000 patients in a year in the United States. Sure, it's not the most commonly prescribed drug, but it's still life-saving for those who need it. I should warn you, the following video might leave you outraged. But when Martin was asked if he had done anything differently, this was his response.
And I have two questions for you. The first is, if you could rewind the clock a few months, I wonder if you would do anything differently. And the second is, I'd like to know if you think corporate reputation matters.
I probably would have raised the price higher, is probably what I would have done.
Why?
I think healthcare prices are inelastic. I could have raised it higher and made more profits for our shareholders, which is my primary duty. And again,
Martin is incredibly sarcastic and always acts like he's the smartest person in the room. It's no surprise that his attitude took a toll on his reputation. He definitely wasn't America's favorite guy. In 2016, the US Congress called Martin to testify during an inquiry about the sudden price spike of Daraprim. Instead of taking it seriously, Martin laughed and mocked the questions, responding to each inquiry with,
on the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question. I'd like to yield.
Despite his unethical behavior, the fact is that everything he did was within the law. including the increase of more than $700, an increase of over 5,000%. Some people even began to admire the executive, claiming he was a genius for exposing the power that the pharmaceutical industry had, power granted by American law itself. Martin Shkreli became known as Pharma Bro and earned the title of the most hated man in America. Later, in 2018, he was sentenced to prison for investment fund fraud, a case unrelated to the price hike of the medication, serving 4 years before his release. In 2022, Shkreli was also ordered to return $65 million in profits from the dramatic price increase of the drug. However, the medication's price never returned to normal. Shkreli did make some valid points, one of which is that he's not the first in the pharmaceutical industry to implement such abusive price hikes. Many larger companies do it regularly, yet few seem willing to admit it. At the end of 2013, Gilead Sciences received approval to market its new medication for hepatitis C, called Sovaldi, but the treatment was priced at an astonishing $84,000. But the issue wasn't just the price itself, it was the arbitrary way it was determined. Essentially, the medication shouldn't have cost that much, and Gilead's executives knew it. They weighted pricing options between $50,000 and $115,000, trying to strike a balance between maximizing profit and not tarnishing the company's reputation. Ultimately, they settled on the not-so-low price of $84,000. Another factor influencing Gilead's decision was the potential to charge similar amounts for future medications, creating a pricing standard that ensured ongoing profits. A well-known case involved two medications produced by Genentech, a subsidiary of the Swiss giant Roche, Avastin and Lucentis. Initially, Avastin was used for cancer treatment, but ophthalmologists discovered it could also treat age-related macular degeneration, or AMD, a condition that leads to gradual vision loss. As a result, many doctors worldwide began prescribing Avastin for AMD. When the lab recognized the opportunity for higher profits, they launched a new medication, Lucentis. The key difference was that Lucentis was marketed specifically for AMD, but it turned out to have the same effect as Avastin, only at a significantly higher cost. While an injection of Avastin ran about $50, Lucentis was priced at over $2,000 for the exact same treatment. So, Martin Shkreli was right when he stated that overcharging for medications is a widespread issue in the pharmaceutical industry. But there are other problems in the pharmaceutical industry that can hurt people a lot, even if they don't involve prices. Many medications are lifesavers, utilizing innovative and revolutionary technologies to improve patients' quality of life. Yet the reality is that many drugs come with costs that aren't measured in dollars or euros. All medications can have side effects. Most of the time these effects are mild, causing headaches, drowsiness, or nausea, but sometimes they can be severe or even life-threatening. There are cases where laboratories are aware of significant side effects but choose to hide this information, prioritizing profits over patient safety. In 2011, the drug Mediator, produced by the French lab Servier, gained notoriety not for a good reason. Studies revealed that the medication, initially prescribed for diabetes and later for weight loss, could cause serious heart and lung problems. In France alone, it was estimated that up to 2,000 people might have died as a result of using Mediator during the 33 years it was on the market. Although Mediator was pulled in 2009, the Servier lab faced accusations of concealing these health risks for years. In 2021, over 10 years later, the lab was found guilty of homicide, involuntary injury, and fraud, and ordered to pay 2.7 million euros in compensation. Lawyer Jean-Christophe Cobé called the fine ridiculous compared to the group's annual profit of around 4.7 billion euros. Another scandal involved Depakote, also produced by the French company Sanofi, used for epilepsy treatment. In 2020, Sanofi was under investigation for the deaths of 4 babies after their mothers took Depakine during pregnancy. The risk of fetal malformation associated with Depakote has been recognized for years. This was highlighted in a 2011 notification from Anvisa, the Brazilian health regulatory agency, which, like the FDA, is tasked with ensuring public health and safety concerning food, drugs, medical devices, and other health-related products. Yet, many accuse Sanofi of making only discreet mentions of this serious issue, potentially leading to the birth of thousands of affected children. In May 2022, Sanofi was ordered to pay 415,000 euros to the family of a child victim of Depakine, who was born with autism. The court determined that Sanofi was aware of the risk but failed to disclose this information in their brochure in France. This kind of scandal isn't new. In the 60s and 70s, a medication called Primodose was used as pregnancy test. Manufactured by the German company Schering AG, concerns first arose in 1967, when Primodose were linked to malformation and fetal deaths. The hormone-based medication contained contraceptive substances equivalent to 40 modern contraceptive pills. Despite the growing concerns, Primodose was only removed from the market in 1978, 11 years later, and the company never accepted responsibility for the situation. The scandal was buried for nearly 4 decades until new documents prompted Sky News to release a documentary about in 2017, detailing the victims' stories. A similar issue occurred slightly before Primodose, specifically in the 50s and 60s, with a substance called thalidomide, used as sedative and tranquilizer. Thalidomide was produced by another German company, Chemie Grünenthal, which still exists today as Grünenthal. Shortly after its introduction, thalidomide began to be prescribed for common ailments in pregnant women, such as flu, colds, and nausea. In 1956, the medication was marketed by 14 different pharmaceutical companies in 46 countries under license from Chemie Grünenthal. Notably, one of the few countries where thalidomide was not marketed was the United States, where the FDA rejected the drug. However, just 5 years after its introduction, in 1961, concerns arose about the medication's relationship to fetal malformations impacting limbs, brain, vision, and hearing. Australian doctor William McBride first raised these concerns, leading to the drug's formal withdrawal by Chemie Grünenthal that same year. Yet, many versions of the drug continue to circulate globally, and it is estimated that over 10,000 children were born with issues related to thalidomide until 1962. Thalidomide also affected children in other countries such as Brazil. The substance was introduced there in 1957, and it was only withdrawn in 1965, 4 years after it was banned elsewhere. Even after that, thalidomide was still used for other purposes, like treating leprosy. That's why the South American country is the only one that has seen 3 generations impacted by thalidomide syndrome. In 1982, Law 7070 was passed, offering lifetime pensions to those harmed by thalidomide. This situation was explored in detail in the documentary Tá Faltando Alguma Coisa, which translates to Something is Missing, produced by the Brazilian Association of Thalidomide Syndrome Carriers. You can find it at thalidomida.org.br and on YouTube. Currently, the pharmaceutical industry is profit-driven. While this is the norm for much of the global economy, a completely natural occurrence, the relentless pursuit of larger profits often leads to ethical concerns being pushed aside. When ethics are lacking in an industry that directly impacts human health, serious consequences arise, as we have seen today, repeating over and over again. Unfortunately, it seems unlikely that this will change soon. A recent study indicated that from 1999 to 2018, the American pharmaceutical industry spent nearly $5 billion on lobbying, attempting to pressure the federal government to approve or reject measures based on the interests of the labs. In other words, a well-established structure exists, giving large laboratories far more power than they should possess. If the pharmaceutical industry seems to be in bad shape, what medicine could really fix it? Now, I want to hear what you think. What are your thoughts on the tactics that the pharmaceutical industry uses to make such big profits? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, check out what's on the screen right now. I get into the caste system in Colombia, exploring the different social strata and how they impact people's lives. Click and join us. That's it for now. Take care.